two of this offense. What do you expect to see out of it this year? Are you expecting a little bit faster start from you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of returners, continuity with the staff understanding what we're about, what we're trying to accomplish. So, I think we've got some core leadership too that we've already identified that I don't know if I could have said a year ago, just being fresh into it. So just all of those things, I would expect us to get off to a faster start, and I know our players certainly expect that too.
How much more comfortable are you in this setting now after, you're here in your second year and a half here in Tigertown? How much more comfortable are you with the experience?
Yeah, more comfortable for sure. And I think mainly from a standpoint of just getting integrated with the people here, with the coaches, with the staff, kind of our process, how we practice, going against that defense every single day in practice. Just all those things kind of mixed together kind of adds up to that.
Hey, Coach, how are you? And how was summer? What was new? What stayed the same?
Summer was great. It always goes fast. Kind of probably like every coach's response. You love it, you enjoy it, you look forward to it for a long time, and about that last week of vacation, you're kind of ready to get back and get ready to go. But we had camps, that unbelievable camp season for us, and a lot of the athletes that we had here, as well as our youth camp, was always a blast. But, the camp season, the work that our guys have put in on their own kind of all summer, and the plan that we put out for them and them executing that plan, I feel really good about that. I think we've made a lot of strides this summer. And again, that kind of goes back to some of the leadership that I feel like we have on our side of the ball this year. So, feel good about it. I think it was a good 2 months for us for sure.
Last year was a little bit of a roller coaster, but you guys were right there when it all ended. Does that bring a piece of comfort to know that it was the little things and maybe it was a flukish a little bit, but like you guys were right there, now you're finally hopefully eradicating a lot of those miscues at the race?
Yeah, I think you got to learn from all those things, right? I mean, there was a lot of, the close games that we came up a little bit short on, some of the mishaps. I mean, they're all things that us as coaches and our players certainly got to learn from, and that's where you kind of saw us grow as the season went on, and that's just going to carry some momentum, as we all know, into this season for us. Well, it was a roller coaster going back watching it too. There's a lot of really good things, a lot of promising things, a lot of flashes here and there, and also obviously some things that we just got to get corrected. We just got to be better. So, it's always good as a coach once the season ends to decompress for a minute, go back, really evaluate what went on, and you got to kind of look at it with a fine-tooth comb, but you also got to look at it kind of macro as well. So it's always a great time for us, and I think we found a lot of things that we tried to address this spring.
Specifically, when you look at the turnovers, maybe the fumbles, is there anything that y'all do differently? Is there anything that you could identify as a reason why that was such an issue of times?
Yeah, you always want to look, is it some sort of technique thing? Is it personnel? You're always emphasizing and trying to work on this stuff in practice ad nauseum. So, I think just a lot of unfortunate things, honestly. But it's something that we're certainly going to emphasize moving forward, just as we did last year. But obviously, you gotta take care of the ball. There's no question about it.
You brought up core leadership. Who have you seen really step up, and in what ways?
Well, I think Phil Maffa obviously is a guy that's kind of the quiet leader. He's going to do it by his actions and his play, and just always doing the right thing. So he's certainly a guy that our guys look to. Jake Brenningstool comes to mind as someone that's really improved and kind of emerged in that role. I'm really proud of him and his maturity and what he's done, and kind of taking that thing by the horns a little bit through the spring and this summer. I know Cade's certainly improved that as well now that he's played and kind of has some credibility that he's been the guy for a year. Up front, Tristan Lee, Blake Miller, certainly guys that bring a lot to the table from a leadership standpoint.
Did you have a conversation with Cade about how important that is that maybe he kind of take the reins with that and lead this team?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we always talk about. I mean, that whole quarterback room, I mean, that's something you're always trying to evolve and get better with. And it's one of those things that there's a little bit of a fine line. You can't be a fraud. You can't try and overdo it. You can't do too little. Like in my mind, there's kind of a balance and a happy medium to it. And he's certainly finding his own way right now with it.
What are you expecting out of Cade on the field this one?
I just expect sharp, I mean, just a guy that's not going to panic, a guy that's going to understand what we're trying to do, minimizing some of the bad plays. I mean, those are certain things that off the top of my head that we should be able to see this fall.
What kind of progress did you see in him as the season went along? It seemed like as the season got along, he got better, and you saw places where he made mistakes that he learned. Did you see that when you were backing up the film?
Yeah.
Progress?
Yeah, I mean, just with all the things that kind of went on in our season, it's a good problem to have with a guy like Cade. Is at times he's one of those that really believes in himself, which is awesome. But at times you can try to do a little bit too much. And when certain guys were missing and maybe a little thin in certain spots, maybe the added pressure of he felt like he had to do a little bit too much probably crept in at times. But as the season went on, I think he learned that. I think he understood that a little bit better. And really, I think the game just kind of slowed down for him each and every week. And that's really what I saw as you look through it, chronologically.
Yes, you mentioned a couple of times where he maybe tried to do too much. I know the Florida State game is probably one that stands out for a lot of people's mind. But you guys have an added issue of helmet tech this year. Do you think that communication right up until potentially the ball is snapped can be a benefit in terms of his decision making and in situations like that?
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be a helpful tool. There's no question about it. I think the whole key, with Cade, with all of our quarterbacks, and probably across the board in college football, is just what's going to be too much for some of those guys, right? I mean, they're not professionals. They're not an NFL quarterback that's sitting in a meeting room every hour of the day. And so I just think that's where, as coaches, we got to do a good job of not really putting too much on his plate. But I think it's certainly going to be a helpful tool.
Do you talk to him about how to use that best for him, or do you talk to other NFL coaches, quarterbacks who kind of used the tech for a long time? How did you prepare for that?
Yeah, I tried to ask several NFL guys that have just more experience with it, with that sort of technology, and so was able to kind of bounce some ideas off of, their trial and errors, and hopefully we'll speed up ours as we go through it.
Is there a balance with that? Because obviously you got to win every play, right? So if you give him information that helps, but how does it impede his development in seeing the game and trying to react to what's out there?
I mean, just with our style of offense and what we do and what we believe in, we feel like whatever we're putting out there on the script or in a game plan, we feel like he's going to be able to execute no matter what happens. And so that's kind of the core philosophy. Now, if we can give him a little added tip and help him out, great. But, again, don't want to give him too much either.
Regarding the area on the field, what's something that you'd like to, obviously moving the ball is not a problem between the 20s, but what's a stat maybe halfway through the year where you'll be really impressed to know that if you guys are attacking the long ball well or crossing patterns well, what's something that you go, if we're doing this well, we're probably very successful?
I mean, you look at the first half of our season, obviously the red zone scoring is the big one. And you look at the second half of our season, and we were really good in terms of red zone scoring. So obviously that's always going to be a big one, and certainly explosive plays. I mean, those two things are kind of the biggest deals aside from turnovers. So those would be probably the two. Well, it's tough. I mean, that just comes back to chemistry. You did all this stuff in spring and summer a year ago for him and all those quarterbacks, and you get into fall, and all of a sudden it's a lot of different guys that are practicing. And, I know with Tyler Brown specifically, like a guy that played really well and emerged for us, obviously, last season. in the second half of the season, I mean, the dude barely practiced. And so all of a sudden, maybe the first time that Cade's actually throwing it to Tyler is on Saturday. And so that's tough. I mean, that's part of football, though. But that does come back to chemistry, and you hope that that's improved as we move forward, for sure.
What's it been like working with Coach Luke in terms of matching his skills as an offensive line coach with what your scheme is and how that all works together?
Yeah, he's been great. He's very adaptive. I mean, he's been around. He's been in different systems. He's worked for other people, so he's an adaptive person. But certainly has brought some stuff to the table for us in terms of a little bit of scheme here and there, for sure. But I think just ways to attack different things that we see, different defenses. And, that freshness is always good as a coach. Like, I love that. And obviously his passion and his fire and all those things kind of speak for itself. So he's been a great guy to work with so far.
You talk about Phil being a quiet leader. How ready is he for him being the guy out there coming up this season?
Oh, I think he's chomping at the bit. I really do. He's a guy that whatever you put on his plate, he's going to be able to handle it. Like, he's a confident, mature person that believes in himself. So I think whatever you throw at Phil, he's going to be ready.
Do you expect him to be not necessarily the same role as Will, because I'm not sure how many guys can do that, but a little more active as a receiver out of the backfield and that kind of stuff this year?
Yeah, I mean, Phil's a guy that can catch the ball, and I know he's a big guy, but he's really good at making a first guy miss, and so just another way to get him some space and where you don't have 6-7 guys trying to tackle him right in the box is always probably a good thing for us. So, yeah, I look forward to him, certainly doing some things out of the backfield and getting in some space, no doubt.
Talk about explosive plays a little bit. That's a key. Tell me about the two freshmen in Wesco and Moore, and do you think that can change this offense a little bit, some of the things they bring to the table?
I mean, they're certainly going to help. And listen, that room's got some depth right now for us going into spring and summer and approaching fall camp. I mean, that's a room from a depth perspective that's kind of looks totally different than a year ago. I mean, it really does. And in terms of who you have in there and experience and the amount of returners, that's going to be a really competitive room this fall camp. And certainly Wesco and TJ we're excited about. Saw some great flashes from Wesco in the spring, and some of the things we've heard this summer on him have been great. And as well as TJ's just starting to get going, but his skill set's certainly going to be a competitive addition to that room for sure.
Where are you at with the backup situation at quarterback with Trent and Christian, and who's your number two? Are they co-number twos? How y'all going into that?
Yeah, they're still going to have to battle here in fall camp. Those two guys flashed in spring. Trent had a few less practices due to a little injury there at the beginning of spring. So those guys are going to have to battle through it in fall camp, no question.
What did you see out of Pman in the spring that allowed him to move up that ladder?
Well, he's just a guy that can function and execute at a pretty high level, and that's due to his intelligence and his decisiveness, and he's just got a little bit of the gamer to him, and kind of has some of that moxie. But certainly excited about him as well as CV.
What kind of growth have you seen with like Cade and Jackson all practice, their spring practice today?
I would say the biggest thing is I just feel like you can put a little bit more on his plate, and he really understands. He's not just saying, yes, sir, I understand. He actually gets it. And, I just think it's continuing to slow down for him. And you see him, even in his movements, he's such a twitchy, kind of hyperactive guy. I mean, even in some of just those mannerisms and demeanor on the field within the play, you just start to see him calm down.
Is that where they going through some failure, having to take some criticism and all of that? I think that's kind of hard in different ways, or matured it maybe.
I mean, going through some tough things is always the best teacher of how to get better, for us as coaches and certainly as players. So he's someone that's mindful of when he's got to be better, and he's certainly not going to shy away from it. So yeah, I'm proud of him that way for sure.
What's your feel for sort of who you think you can maybe
fast.
Yeah, Keith Adams flashed quite a bit for us this spring, and he's the hammerhead, and he's a tough guy to tackle. You got to make a business decision if you're coming downhill to tackle him. So he's got a skill set that's certainly going to help us. Jarvis Green was also someone that flashed, I thought, quite a bit in our second half of spring. So I was proud of the way he finished and really kind of emerged there late. And then Jay Haynes. Jay Haynes is the wild card. He's a guy that has a lot of burst and a lot of change of pace to him. So, just looking to see him this fall as well.